Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons & Dragons where we're trying to take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgy kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. And a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And a big thank you to our good friends at Dice Legion. Use the promo code Sinister and get 10% off all of your purchases there. The link to both sites is in the description. Without further ado, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're going to talk about the new playtest, Fighter. So the Fighter went through quite a few changes, and I think some of them are great. And I'm a big fan of playing the Fighter anyway. I think it's really a fantastic class, even though it's pretty simple and straightforward. But let's jump right into it. So at first level, you're going to get Fighting Style and Second Wind, which is normal. Second Wind is a little different. Now you can use your Second Wind twice, and you regain one use when you finish a short rest, and you regain all uses when you finish a long rest, which is a little interesting. It's a little bit more uses out of it, which is pretty good. And later on, it's going to evolve into a different ability. Now, I'm actually really excited about this, even though a lot of people are not. The change to Action Surge. So you can push yourself beyond your normal limits for a moment. Once on your turn, you can take one additional action, except the magic action. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. And starting at level 17, you can use it twice before a rest, but only once a turn. This, I think, is designed to kind of limit the amount of people that multi-class into the Fighter. Now it makes more sense for you to be a kind of Gish kind of character, where you would need to kind of use a nice happy medium between magic and physicals. So, obviously, this is kind of built for classes like the Paladin, the Warlock, the Eldritch Knight, the Swords Bard. But it's, in my opinion, it's cool because previously people were using it to cast 2 spells in one round, where now you have to embrace that might and magic kind of a feel. So you can only do one. So if you use magic on your first turn, you can action surge and make some attacks. So now as the Fighter progresses, you're going to get a whole bunch of new abilities, like Tactical Mind, which lets you use a charge of your Second Wind ability to increase your number rolled on an ability check. Now this is specifically for ability checks. You can roll a d10 and add that number. If it fails, however, it does not expend the use of Second Wind, which is pretty good because it gives you another thing to play with and you can kind of toy around. And you do get 2 uses before a short rest, in which case you get 1 back of Second Wind. So this ability does have a little bit of viability and regular use, and you should use it pretty often. But that's a cool way to turn that, especially if it's something you don't use frequently, into something you might need to do. Then at 5th level, you get Tactical Shift. So whenever you use your Second Wind with a bonus action, which is always how you use it, you can move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks, which is great because now it's like a tactical retreat. It works really well in case you are really wounded or you desperately need to get out of a situation. It's a great way to regain HP, to buffer some of the damage loss, and then put yourself in a more opportunistic situation. Maybe back out of the way, maybe they're all clustered around you, so this is a perfect opportunity for someone to AoE them. Indomino stays the same. You can use it twice between long rests, and starting at 13 levels, at 13th level, you can use it 3 times between long rests, which is great because Indomino lets you re-roll your saving throws, which is a great opportunity to get out of devastating spells that can hinder you, like Hold Person and things like that. But it did get a little bit of a buff because now you add your Fighter level on top of it. So at 9, it's a +9 to that save. Now you're really something to be feared on the battlefield. At 9th level, you're going to get Master of Armaments. This is a new feature because it's based around all the weapon masteries that you get, which is those special skills that come on each weapon independently. You are a master of weapons. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can choose any of the kinds of mastery weapons you're using and replace the mastery property of each with another mastery property. The chosen kind of weapon must qualify for the new property. For example, you could replace Longsword Sap property with the Push property. These properties changes only apply for you, not for others, and the changes end for you when you finish your next long rest. So this is going to be a way for really to study how the new weapons work and implement that into your playstyle. So now you always have this bonus ability on your attacks, which is very, very useful for a fighter. I think it's actually really unique and a very cool thing that I hope no other classes really get, because it feels special to a character that dedicates their lives to using martial weapons. Then later on, you get one of the greatest abilities you'll ever see on a fighter, studied attacks. You masterfully study your opponents and learn from each attack you make. If you make an attack roll against a creature and miss, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. Considering how many attacks you have, this is such a huge benefit. This is a passive that's always on. Advantage is such an incredible ability. Think of the ramifications if you are the samurai fighter. With fighting spirit and you switching off advantage to make 2 attacks, you are going to generate such a huge pull of attack opportunities, which can increase your damage overall. And you're just running up and hitting constantly with the fighter. So this really makes everything for the fighter just that much better. It feels good. It feels so rewarding to stick to a fighter level 13 and get this ability to guarantee yourself advantage. It's so good, and it helps to stabilize your output for damage, because if you miss, you're not going to be, the chances of you missing your next attack is really limited. And at 11th level, you attack 3 times rather than once. So you're going to get used to this, and you're going to see it pretty regularly. And then when you don't, you're now crit fishing. If you're a champion fighter, think of the opportunities here. The Battle Master, one of my favorite fighter subclasses. A few things stayed the same. Some of the things are different. The way combat superiority works is basically the same. You get 3 maneuvers. You learn 2 additional removers when you hit 7, 10, and 15. So you're going to learn basically most of them. A lot of the maneuvers from Tasha's were now included. Some of the things got a little bit of reworking, but mainly they kind of just stayed the same. There's a few minor buffs really to them, but nothing really too noteworthy to really go in depth about. Your saving throw is still dexterity or strength, depending on your opinion, which works great depending on what kind of a fighter you want to be. One of the changes is Student of War, where you gain proficiency in one type of artisan tools of your choice, and you gain proficiency in one skill of your choice from the skills available to fighters at level 1. This helps the fighter be a little bit more rounded. Proficiency in skills makes you better at adventuring. The more proficiencies you gain, the more opportunities you have to be viable in adventuring circumstances, which is great because when you're a martial heavy class, you kind of tend to fall on the backside as far as adventuring things are concerned, because that kind of usually goes to bards, rogues, and rangers. At 7th level, Know Thy Enemy, or really Know Your Enemy, has changed. Where previously let you know a few things like hit points, AC, and how many levels they had in a character class. Now it works kind of like a ranger feature, where you take a bonus action and you just detect whether or not a creature has any damage, immunities, resistance, or vulnerabilities. And if the creature has any of them, you know what they are. And once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. You can also restore use of this feature by expending 1 superiority die. You'll probably just use that one action on big bosses or big fights, or like a surprising enemy that seems really difficult. That's going to be your reasoning for this. Outside of that, I can't imagine spending a superiority die on it. Though you still do gain them back after a short rest, so maybe if it's coming up where you know you're a little low on resources, or your party tends to do that, normally we'll take short rest after a big fight or something, then maybe you might be a little bit more reasonable in using it. At level 10, your superiority die becomes a D10. At 15th level, you gain Relentless. This is awesome. This is kind of an offshoot of the Swords Bard ability. Once per turn, when you use a maneuver, you can roll a D8 and use the number rolled instead of expending a superiority die. This means you could save that D10 for something special, and you can rock a D8 once every turn. You really get a lot of opportunities to really go in depth. This makes you so much more dynamic of a fighter, because you can constantly do things like commanding strike or trip attack or disarming attack, menacing attack, and you can get them going every turn. And you really don't lose viability for this. It's a passive that's constantly on. That, and at 15th level, you already have access to know your enemy. I'm sorry. You get access to study attacks, so you have that advantage coming to you. So now you have a great opportunity to really, really upstart your attack, and the way you fight now changes. Now you're constantly using maneuvers, which is great, and it feels good. At 18th level, your superiority dies now become a D12, which is a large damage die. And again, you still have that option of regularly using a D8 interchangeably. So maybe if you hit a crit, that's when you use a real superiority die. And that gives you that opportunity to double that dice and up your damage. Onto the Brawler. Now this is a new subclass that the fighters are given. As much as I love the fighter, I really dislike this class. And the reason why I dislike this class is because it competes so much with the monk, and because of the fighter's base core abilities, it makes the monk significantly less appealing. And it's really bothersome to me that they would just kind of put this out there and stomp all over the monk. Or at least that's how I feel, at least in the current concept of the way the monk is working. I hope they do a revamp to it in this playtest or the next playtest, and they kind of put the monk where it could be or it should be. I think they're taking steps in the right direction, but they're not there yet. But you'll kind of understand when you see as I go through this subclass. So at 3rd level, you gain Unarmed Expert. You can roll a d6 plus your strength modifier in place of the normal damage of your unarmed strikes. If you aren't holding any weapons or a shield when you make the attack roll, the d6 becomes a d8, which is pretty impressive considering how long it takes the monk to get a d8 hit dice for their attacks. But again, problematic. At level 3, you get Improvised Expert. You are proficient with improvised weapons. Whenever you finish a long rest, choose one weapon property from the one-handed list and one from the two-handed list. Until the end of your next long rest, the one-handed choice applies to the one-handed improvised weapons you wield, and the two-handed choice applies to the two-handed weapon ones you use. In addition, whenever you attack with an improvised weapon, you can give it one of the following mastery properties for the attack, depending on whether it can be wielded with one or two hands. Sap, slow, or vex, or cleave, push, or topple. Now, in a game with magic weapons, how often are you going to be breaking a broom to hit somebody, or picking up a chair, or whatever it is? It's a little odd of a concept to me, but for this very extremely niche circumstance where you don't have any weapons as a fighter, you do have a couple of viable opportunities to do this. I will note that they did mention that in the new players Dungeon Master's Guide, there will be magic items to enhance unarmed strikes and improvised weapons, and they will be, designed for the monk, the brawler fighter, and the College of Dance Bard. And it's great that they'll have them, but I don't know if I really want a magic broken bottle as opposed to a magical dagger. At level 7, you gain Grappling Expert. You can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action when you use your unarmed strike. In this way, you must choose the grapple or shove option. In addition, at the start of each of your turns, you can deal 1d6 bludgeoning damage to one creature grappled by you. This is pretty great, but I feel like this is something that's better suited for a barbarian who's kind of encouraged to grapple. Though you are strength-based in this kind of a subclass, it is in your benefit to do some grappling, and to be able to hold them and cause a d6 damage for free is pretty great. At level 10, you have Dirty Fighting. You have advantage on attack rolls made with improvised weapons and unarmed strikes against a creature grappled by you. You will see a lot more grappling in this kind of a case, because it's an additional d6 for free. Because you're not holding a weapon or a shield, it's a d8 for your attacks, and you have advantage on all of them. Pretty straightforward. It does help. It adds a d6 on top of whatever you're doing. Depending on what kind of magic items release, maybe you do something that does like an additional d4 or d6 or something of damage, which would make a huge pile of dice added to your damage. At 15th level, you get Improvised Specialist. You are a master at making the ordinary deadly. When you hit a creature with an improvised weapon, you can add your proficiency bonus to the damage roll, and the damage die of your two-handed improvised weapons becomes a d12. In addition, whenever you attack with an improvised weapon, you can use 2 mastery properties from improvised experts instead of 1. This is dynamic just because you can use 2 masteries when you hit with this attack. On top of it, it's a d12. On top of it, you're adding your proficiency bonus on top of the damage you roll. So depending on what magic items exist, maybe you got a +1, +2 or something like that. And you're doing what, +5, +6 for your proficiency bonus. So that's easy. That can easily be a +7 on top of whatever damage you're doing or whatever feats you have or whatever's going in your direction. Plus the masteries that are included. So that's a lot to add on, but you're still attacking with a broken chair. It's such a bizarre concept. It seems like more of a modern world D&D setting kind of a class, which kind of takes away from the fantasy basis that it's really kind of rooted in. And finally, at level 18, your unarmed specialist ability kicks in. Your unarmed strikes improve to a d8 if you aren't holding any weapons or a shield. When you make an attack roll, then the d8 becomes a d10. So if you're not holding anything, you're now wielding a d10 with your attacks. So you're doing a lot of damage. If you grapple someone with a bonus attack because you use an unarmed strike, you're adding a d6 on top of that. The damage is there, feasibly with the right magic items. If they do create them, that's a pretty substantial class. It's just, it doesn't feel like a fighter. It feels like a weird monk to me that does significantly more damage than the monk does, and it kind of breaks my heart to see the fighter become that. Is it great, like, on paper? Yeah. Could it do a lot of cool things in combat? Absolutely. Does it create a unique style of gameplay for the fighter? Yes. But I feel like it steps on the opportunity of what the monk should be. And that's kind of what breaks my heart about this. The champion fighter, the unsung hero of fighters. This stayed a little bit the same. There's a couple interesting things that they did change. First and foremost, you do get improved critical, which now you crit on a roll of 19 or 20. You gain remarkable athlete, which changed a little bit. Thanks to your athleticism, you have advantage on initiative rolls and strength athletics checks. In addition, when you make a running long jump, the distance you can cover is increased by a number of feet equal to your strength modifier, which is pretty, it can be useful depending on how you are or what you're doing in game. If there's varying levels of terrain, it can be beneficial to you. In level 7, you gain an additional fighting style, which is pretty normal. At level 10, you gain heroic warrior. The thrill of battle drives you toward victory. During combat, you can give yourself heroic advantage whenever you start your turn without it. Heroic advantage gives you advantage on any d20 roll you feel like. This is a passive, so you always get a d20 for combat whenever you want. It doesn't go away, so you can't hold on to it and use it for something else. Maybe you're doing a save, maybe you're in a situation with a lot of traps. Whatever it can be, you don't have to use it in combat. It's just gain for being in combat. And that's a pretty big, useful opportunity to balance out something negative. At 15th level, your superior critical kicks in. So now you crit on an 18, 19, or 20, which is just a huge amount. Keep in mind, you do have that ability that all fighters get at level 13. That gives them the ability to use studied attacks, which gives them advantage whenever they miss on an attack. So this is huge at this level, where that's kicking in and you have such a big opportunity to crit pretty regularly because of that. At 18th level, you gain your final champion fighter ability, which gives you 2 options to use in battle. Or 2 abilities, really. Defy death, you have advantage on death saving throws. Moreover, when you roll an 18, 19, or 20 on a death save, you gain the benefit of rolling a 20 on a death saves. You also gain Heroic Rally, which was previous to the Champion Fighter, where at the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. If you have no more than half your hit points remaining, you don't gain this benefit if you have 0 hit points. So this is a constant regeneration of hit points that goes on throughout your entire combats or whatever circumstances you are. Then you find yourself at half HP. So that works kind of to be a big damage reduction, because at the start of every turn, it's basically like you took 10 less damage than you did last turn. If you get lucky and dodge a whole bunch of attacks, that 10 goes pretty far. So keep that in mind. I think it's a strong ability. There are very few abilities like that in this game, so it's very cool that the Champion Fighter just gets to keep pushing himself and going further. The Eldritch Knight, one of those great classes that a lot of people have trouble with, but a lot of people truly enjoy. They stayed a little bit the same, and some things changed, but there's only a few things, few and far between. But one of the best improvements possible got brought into this class. So first and foremost, when you're choosing your spells, when you get this at 3rd level, you do still have to pick 2 spells from the Abjuration or the Evocation schools, and then 1 regular spell from the Wizard spell list. But after that, there are no restrictions on the kind of spells you can pick from, except for that they have to be on the Wizard spell list, which is the biggest spell list, which gives you the biggest variety to be very, very customizable in your abilities. And it's a great thing because you're now you're not restricted to just Abjuration or Evocation spells, which sometimes feels a little redundant or mismatched. War Bond stayed exactly the same. That's when you bond your weapons. They gained War Magic at an increased circumstance. Now, when you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of the attacks with a casting of one of your wizard cantrips that has the casting time of an action. Meaning, you can attack Booming Blade, attack Green Flame Blade, and that is something that the Blade Singer had that so desperately feels right here, and I love this ability. I think it's amazing. Eldritch Strike stayed the same, Arcane Charge stayed the same, but at 18th level you get improved War Magic. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace 2 of the attacks with a casting of one of your wizard spells that has a casting time of an action. This is great because you have to take the attack action. So if you make that first attack, you are replacing your other 2 attacks with an actual casting of a spell. This is your only way around our action surge to cast 2 spells, because you can't take the magic action again when you use action surge, but you can take the attack action and you can replace those attacks with War Magic, which is a huge increase to what your damage capabilities can be. Plus, you've just hit them with Eldritch Strike, so they have disadvantage on something, so you can really lay down some serious damage in addition to your regular attacks, which is kind of the bread and butter of the fighter anyway. Our final thoughts. The new fighter outside of the brawler is such an improvement. It feels great. It feels like it breathed a lot of revitalizing anticipation to play this fighter. It feels good. A lot of the increases to the fighter are great. It feels like they really buffed the fighter, and the fighter feels like an easy front runner to choose from. I happen to like the fighter a lot. I love these improvements. I cannot wait to play an Eldritch Knight. I cannot tell you how good it's going to feel to hit level 7. I really just want to really engage with some of the new opportunities that are available to you as an Eldritch Knight, with the variety of new spells you can choose from. You can work on illusions and enchantments. Like, you can do a lot of wild stuff. And I feel like that feels good. It makes the spell choices and the character able to be unique. I love the Battlemaster anyway. I feel like it just feels good. It feels better. It feels improved. It feels like you can now feel that higher level increase when you're able to use maneuvers every turn. You feel like you really elevated who your character is once you reach a high level. And normally nothing feels like that except spells, but the fighter managed to do it. Can't say enough about how excited I am to play a fighter in 1D&D. That being said, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you made it this far, big thank you. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Check us out on Patreon, and a big thank you to our lovely Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much. If you need ttrpg, IRL, accessories, dice, anything like that, check out our good friends at Dice Legion. Use the promo code SINISTER to get 10% off all of your purchases. And thank you. for giving a spooky kid a chance.